Well, let's do it this way. Okay, so the International Women's Day, yes, it was regarded in 1977 by the United Nations and establishes March 8th as recognizing International Women's Day. But the Charter of the United Nations was first signed in 1945, and it was the first international agreement to affirm the principle of equality between men and women. Now, from 1945, this is just some interesting facts about how this progress has been slow but steady. And it was just really interesting when I came across this, is that this is all happening in my lifetime. This is, 1993 was the year I got married. 1993 was the first year that women could wear pants in the US Congress. We're not talking about in parts of the world where, they're developing nations and they have a long way to go. They're immersed in traditions or religious beliefs or traditional beliefs. We're talking about Western North American, where, women have a voice. So there's been a lot of progress that's been made, but it is definitely a long and arduous journey. So gender inequality, as we talked about, and it was a shared opinion, in education, in domestic violence, sexual violence, discrimination in the workplace, a lot of these dynamics hinder the progress of women. I work for a leadership communication firm, and it's amazing how many calls we get for organizations who are starting to recognize that they need to, give voice to the women in the organization because of the value that they bring. But to go back to the point I was making earlier, we have to keep in mind that many injustices and inequalities exist throughout the world, and we have to be aware of them, and we have to stand for social action. And this is not a conversation just about women, but men and women working shoulder to shoulder. So on the bright side is that there's definitely a lot more focus and education on development on women, both in developed countries and in developing countries. There's a lot of activity that's happening worldwide. So there is this starting awareness of our interconnectedness and the importance of the women's contributions, of what they can do to the welfare of society. So to share a little bit about on the belief of social change and spiritual reality, and it evolves around unity. And this is really a fundamental message of the Baha'i faith, is that we are part of one family, one race, one culture. It doesn't matter, regardless of race or gender, status. We are all, as Tim mentioned, we are made in the image of God. We are part of one human family. And one of the tenets of the Baha'i faith is the equality of men and women. So thinking back to Iran, Persia, over a century and a half ago, Baha'u'llah, the Prophet founder, he proclaimed unequivocally the equality of men and women, and he actually wove it in the fabric of his social order. So he put laws around it. He put education laws and attention that needs to be paid to women. And he did this in about 200 years ago in the obscurity of Persia and the Middle East, which seems like not much has changed when it comes to the rights of women in 2022. And back in 1912, his son actually was imprisoned for 40 years. And when he was released, he made some travels to the West. And he attended one of the suffrage movements in New York in 1912. And he said the following. He said, mankind and womankind as parts of composite humanity are co-equal, and that no difference in estimate is allowable for all are human. The conditions in past centuries were due to woman's lack of opportunity. She was denied the right and privilege of education and left in her undeveloped state. Naturally, she could not and did not advance. In reality, God has created all mankind, and in the estimation of God, there is no distinction as to male and female. The most momentous question of this day is international peace and arbitration, and universal peace is impossible without universal suffrage. And this is a quote that was shared in 1912. And again, it goes on the premise that in the past, the world has been ruled by force. And man has been dominating over women by reason of his more forceful and aggressive qualities, both of body and mind. But the balance is already shifting. Force is losing its weight, and mental alertness, intuition, and spiritual qualities of love and service, in which woman is strong, they're gaining ascendancy. Hence, the new age will be an age less masculine and more permeated with the feminine ideals, or to speak more exactly, will be an age in which masculine and feminine elements of civilization will be more evenly balanced. And again, this is, early 1900s that Abdul Baha had mentioned this. And I think if you think about the weight it carried and back in that time, this was not something that really had gotten the attention of people. Women were struggling for it, but men were not coming. And here's a Middle Eastern man coming to Europe and having this kind of a conversation. So I wanted to, and I promised you I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to share this information. Marge, you can send this out if you want. This definitely is a lot more informative in terms of some of the activities that we're doing. There was a film that was made, Glimpses, and this was made by the Baha'i International Community. The link is there, and it's talking about gender equality and work coming and the contributions worldwide. So it's very, very interesting. So where do we go next? And I can't see everybody on the screen right now, so I can't remember the name, but it was just mentioned, one of the last speakers here. Where do we go? For women, for humanity, we have to recognize our oneness, our interconnectedness, and recognize that what happens in one part of the world ultimately will have ripple effects through the rest of the world. We have to value our diversity and practice our inclusion. We are all different. This human race is different. It's this difference that makes the humanity so beautiful. But it's not beautiful if we don't recognize that, right? And our voices are not being heard. And as women, I think we need to have compassion for ourselves as well as others. We're very compassionate. A lot of women, at least in my culture, me, myself included, we tend not to ask for help so much, but we're very helpful to others, and it's okay to have compassion for yourself. Nahid had mentioned about the focus on education on girls and women. Actually, one of the Baha'is believe that if you only have an option to send one child, whether it's man or woman, or a girl or boy to school, send the girl, because she is going to be the educator. Work towards social action and change. This is the day when we really who makes a difference? The leaders. It's the women and men who wanted to make a change. And this is how social action comes about. They don't have to be famous. Use your voice, work towards what your deep conviction is, and be that agent of change. And to really acknowledge the men who support women in their activities and their practices in bringing about the social change and raising the awareness of equality. So I will close off with this quote from the Baha'i writings. And when we're talking about the progress and advancement of humanity, and this analogy, I found it very, very beautiful. So Abdul Baha says that the world of humanity has two wings. One is woman and the other is man. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible. Not until the world of women becomes equal to the world of men and the acquisition of virtues and perfections can success and prosperity be attained as they ought to be. And I think that's a really good way of looking at humanity. You cannot have half of the world be at a disadvantage and expect humanity to flourish. So this is where our brothers definitely come and play. They need to use their influence and to promote the systematic inclusion of women, and really understand that the contributions of women are required for society to progress. And that is